Hi everybody, Evan Tobias here for another recap of what happened in our music learning and teaching class. We came into the room and I had some music playing. It was MF Doom today. And these couple of questions were posted on the screen as people came in, and I encourage everyone to think about them and how they might answer those questions. So who are we learning and teaching with? How might we support all students in our learning communities? What should we know about students so that we may best support them? And what is reality pedagogy, and what does it have to do with music learning and teaching? And that comes out of the work of Christopher Emdin. After thinking through these questions, we got in and we started to center ourselves, and we did some breathing, did a little bit of stretching today. And I let everyone know that starting next class, I'm going to be inviting people to take over the facilitation of the breathing and the centering ourselves part of our class as we open the class up, and for people to put their own twist on it. One of the things I do before each class is I read reading responses, or I listen to the Flipgrid responses, and I did that before this class today. Took some notes on what people responded, and I was really interested in engaging in that discussion. People brought up a lot of really interesting perspectives, great points, good synthesis of the reading, and I wanted to jump right into it. So one of the things I thought about was my original plan for the class should be shifted based on that. As you can see here, I had a plan to start with breathing. Oh yeah, we did a check-in. I forgot about that. What you do to de-stress. And my original plan was to get right into engaging in some music making with some web-based apps that I've curated. But I wanted to jump into the conversation and then save that for later. So I switched things up, and I knew I was going to do that. But one of the other things I did is I brought this as a pedagogical point to the class. And I opened up the screen for everyone to see and to show how it's important to have a plan or a sense of where you think you might want to go, but it's also really important to be able to deviate and move from that plan when the class calls for it. And so I shared with everyone this idea that I don't go into a class and wing it. I mean, I think that I could improvise a class pretty easily at this point in my career, but I rarely would ever do that because I have a sense of where the class might go, but I also have the ability to be really flexible in terms of changing directions. So I shared with everyone this idea that we should go into class with a plan, but we should also be able to move away from that plan and reformulate the plan as needed at any given point in time. Before the discussion of the chapter, I did have a goal of reflecting on our syllabus and providing space for people to contribute to the curriculum of the class and the syllabus. And I mentioned that this would have a connection back to the chapter that we read from Christopher Emdin's book. So if you take a look here, in the syllabus, I mentioned that we had this empty slot here. I had mentioned before that I have some issues with the notion of expected outcomes of a class. We had talked about that in our first class. But today we were thinking through, what do you think the course goals and learning objectives of the course should be? And based on what the class is from my description of the class, but also what you think the learning goals should be based on your interests in the kind of music educator that you would like to be. I mentioned that we would weave these into the class and think through a way of how to merge your learning goals, your interests, the things that you want to get out of the class, with some of the things that I think are important for people to know if they're going to design and facilitate contemporary and comprehensive secondary music programs. And we're going to co-create those learning goals as a learning community, which is important for the ethic of this class, but also just a great exercise, and hopefully something that you will do and your teachers, and for those of you that are teaching right now, hopefully you provide opportunities for students to have input into what the class is and what the class might be. I'd be really interested to hear of how you create those spaces, how you facilitate those conversations, what ways students are co-created curriculum with you and co-creating your classes. So the reading that we engaged with in this prior assignment was Christopher Emdin's For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too, Reality Pedagogy and Urban Education, and I asked people to engage with chapter 1. We also engaged with a video of Christopher Emdin speaking on YouTube, and we just had some open conversation. One thing I'm doing this semester is I've been creating these inquiry, dialogue, expand, and act docs, or idea docs, for many of the readings that we're engaging with. And they start off with some central generative questions that relate not just to the reading itself, but sort of more broadly the themes of the class this week. And then a whole bunch of questions to kind of focus in people's reading on students' lived realities, on the notion of reality pedagogy. And these self-reflection questions are consistent throughout, no matter what we're reading, where I encourage you to think through the points of friction that you're experiencing. And I love the responses to those because they're always very generative and allow us to kind of dig into our perspectives, and often dialectical perspectives where we are sometimes in conflict with either reading or in our own perspectives from the past. So we had some conversation around some of the themes in Emdin's chapter and our own perspectives of it. We did this in breakout groups. We did this as a whole class. A lot of great themes. One of the constant themes that kept coming up was the idea of not making assumptions about the young people who we're engaging with, seeing everyone for who they are, avoiding white saviorship and kind of going into spaces with the notion of I need to fix students, not having a deficit model when we're thinking about young people. So this was some really vibrant and generative conversation. And then where we ended up was moving into some music making online. And one of the things I prefaced this with was the idea that even though a lot of classes have moved into online and hybrid settings, the idea that we cannot create music online is problematic and not accurate. We might not be able to create music and engage in music and do music in the ways that we did when we were physically all together in the same space, but we can still make music. So I encouraged you to start this off by exploring this set of curated resources, these web apps. The reason I've curated these web apps is, one, they're accessible online, low barrier entry point. As long as you have internet access, you can access these web apps. They allow for easy ways, for the most part, of making music, and there are ways of creating and making and layering music. So I encourage you to just play around with them. Just try things out. We were putting up in the chat the specific music apps they were using at any given point. And the idea for today was just to play around, experiment, explore, see what resonated with you, see what you liked, and maybe focus in on something. Next class, we'll dig in a little bit further, and we wanted to get to the point where you could create something that you would find interesting or enjoyable. And also, we want to be able to get to the point where we can create together with these web-based apps and think through the challenges and opportunities of using these web-based apps to create music together synchronously. While the whole class was doing that, I was pulling people into a breakout room to have some conversations, do some check-ins, see how the semester is going for you, see what you might need, figure out ways that I could better support people in the class. And not only am I doing that to really get a sense of what I might need to do to support you better, and I'm also trying to model ways that we can engage with students and to kind of check in with students and to see students as individuals and to check the temperature of our class. So where we're going next is a continued musical engagement. We're going to be thinking more about contemporary comprehensive music classes in the secondary space. Looking forward to the conversations. For those of you that are not in our class and you're watching this and you have perspectives of how you facilitate community, how you see students both as a learning community and as individuals, how you check in with students, we'd love to hear your perspectives of how you're doing that. We'd love to learn how you're fostering community in your classes. We'd love to know what ways that you're fostering musical engagement, whether it's in the physical space of a classroom right now, if it's hybrid, how are you facilitating musical engagement when some students are online and some students are there physically, whether you are there physically or you are online, or how you're facilitating musical engagement when the entire class is online. Is it synchronous? Is it asynchronous? How are you addressing that? What technologies are you using? What analog instruments and voice are you using? How are you doing that? Looking forward to hearing your perspectives. And for those of you in the class, look forward to seeing you soon.